It's been a hectic week one, but we're glad to have you here with all this turmoil and chaos. Uh, I'm all I'm all messed up right now. I just had some cough syrup. My infection's getting better, but we're still not at 100%. We hopefully will be soon though. We had a great week this week. Some very entertaining games. Unfortunately, Danny V cannot be here with us tonight. He's still in class, I believe. I'm joined here though by the Pig Bear. Foxy is also not here. So it's just Pig Bear and I. How was the slate of games this week, Pig Bear?
Great games of football we saw this weekend, especially in one I'll be bringing up later.
We got a couple.
Game that this one would have flown well under the radar, but I'm glad I got to watch it.
You bet. I have to pull something out real quick, but some big storylines this week. We on stream saw a top 10 matchup in Oregon and Baylor. Baylor, three ranked top 15 teams all losing, and they have something in common. We'll talk about that. Kansas State getting an upset win in the Kickoff Classic, and on another neutral site upset, Colorado State would beat Colorado for the first time in 6 tries. We're going to move now to the game we saw on stream on Saturday. We had a long week this week, so that hence why we're on Tuesday night instead of Sunday night. But from Waco, Baylor, and Oregon, number 9 against number 6, the Bears tried their best and put on a good fight, but it was Oregon's day that day. 28-21 the final in the scorching Waco heat. Pig Bear, your thoughts?
Oregon played well out in Waco. Just hard place to play and win.
All right. Don't have anyone else to ask, but we get to move right on from there. We have 3 games I wanted to highlight, all big upsets. First, probably what was the best game we didn't see. From New Orleans, All-State Kickoff Classic, Texas and Alabama. The Crimson Tide rode into this matchup as the number 11 team in the country. Texas had just creeped by on the top 25 at number 25 at that point. The Longhorns kept a great fight all day. This game went to double overtime. 37-31 was the final score. Or Texas stealing it from Alabama, who were 6.5-point favorites in this. Pig Bear?
I mean, Texas recruited well, but we did not know how fast this would have changed their fortunes. They went 4-8 last season.
Yeah, they were 4-8.
Now they're out here beating Alabama. Just
What?
shout out to the program and how they're doing at Texas.
Yeah, what this will mean for Texas coming up is still up in the air. Let's move on now to Gainesville, another 6.5-point favorite. Florida, reigning national champs. This is supposed to be a coronation day, celebrating them winning the title, hanging up the banner. But Ohio State came into the swamp and stole one from the Gators, 23-20. We knew this Buckeye team was going to be a tricky one to face this year, but big enough to beat a reigning national champ in the swamp. What are your thoughts here?
This just the beginning of the not so good day for the SEC this weekend was. So, I mean, whole weekend, not just the day.
We'll talk about that coming after this one. Staying in the state of Florida. Well, staying in the state of Florida, we head up to Tallahassee, Florida State. Florida State stole one from ranked Georgia. The Bulldogs were number 15 in the country. 24-20 the final. The Seminoles begin 1-0. Stealing a game from Georgia where they were 3.5-point favorites. So now we combine this. Due to our congregation polls, we had to balance out everyone's polls together. And at the end, only 3 SEC teams were ranked in our week 1 top 25. Those being Alabama at 11, or those being Florida at number 4, Alabama at 11, and Georgia at 15. All 3 of them lost in week 1. Now, this was tough competition, granted. These were teams that were expected to be competing in for their conferences. But for them, and we expected like maybe one of these games to flip. But for all 3 to flip against the SEC, And for those three to be your top teams in the conference, what does this mean about the SEC? What does this say about the conference?
Well, it just says that they're starting to falter behind as a conference. SEC, they say it just means more, but you're falling behind the ACC, and because the program Clemson, I'll say this: Clemson and Virginia Tech are better than the SEC's top two. Well, maybe not Florida, but
I think I
they're up
think
there.
I think depending on the teams, I think Florida doesn't win that national championship. They got very lucky. They got very lucky.
Yeah,
Kenneth Latimer played out of his mind in that national championship. We'll talk about Clemson in a moment, but I think the ACC's best teams would beat Florida in a national championship. I think Virginia Tech would have beat Florida if they qualified.
yeah,
I think Clemson, if they hadn't faltered at the end of the year and made the Natty, I think they could give Florida at least a run for their money.
yeah,
I think if they also didn't falter, I think Michigan gives them a run. I think Oklahoma State for sure would beat Florida in the national championship.
yeah.
Obviously, it's obviously more about who actually can capitalize and not about what ifs. But I think, I think Florida is going to be looked at differently than a lot of other national champions, especially with how they performed here. And I think the SEC, with all of the turmoil going on in the background the past 2 years, and with this performance to open up, this is not sparking confidence for a conference who, if you're reading a little deeper in, Tulane wants out. You just lost Georgia Tech. You couldn't get South Carolina to join you.
Well, I mean,
There,
that is the white meat of South Carolina, though. I mean,
that panic button might be looking more and more tempting.
yeah.
But anyway,
And
from there,
there's an option you want to go nuclear and try and grab the big football programs out of the ACC, um, Clemson and Florida State, and possibly Virginia Tech.
the problem is, do they want to come to this
I
conference?
doubt it. That's the
If
thing.
if you can't even keep Georgia Tech, if you can't even hold on to a team who, yes, did play for an SEC championship a few years back and won one of the more recent national championships for the SEC back in 2017. If you can't even keep them around, and if you can't keep them around, and you can't, your biggest team this year was going to have an asterisk regardless because Alabama is a program right now mired in controversy.
Oh yeah,
They're favored
for
to win the
one play.
conference still.
They paid
The
off the
most
refs for one play.
the most inspiring team, the top teams who got wins this week were LSU and Mississippi State. LSU got a tough road win against Houston. Mississippi State blew out a Chattanooga squad who is very much unprepared for this matchup. I I don't want to linger too much on it, but I feel like another LSU conference championship would not be very inspiring, especially with how poorly the Tigers performed last season.
Yeah, more importantly, why is LSU going on the road to Houston? That's another sign of weakness in the conference.
I
It's
mean,
not like it's a conference game with like the likes of North Carolina traveling to App State, where App State's proven themselves in occasion. It's Houston. It's an out of conference, out of state game. Why are you playing on the road?
Houston is a power. They are in the Big 12 this year.
Yes, I forgot. My bad. That was my bad, y'all.
No, don't put some respect on Houston's name. But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll move on from there. We'll talk more about
But
conferences
hey,
in depth in a
actually, on
little
the
bit.
flip side, shout out Houston for having this game scheduled before they were in the Big 12.
How about that?
Yeah.
This was back when like LSU was like really good too.
Yeah. Shout out for Houston for getting that game scheduled, though.
Anyway, to Death Valley, the Clemson Tigers getting a
Real
big
Death Valley.
statement win. We played this one on stream as well. This was this was on our Discord, the Danny B exclusive game. We had a couple others on there for the first weekend as well. But Clemson commanding the game against Stanford 17-14 the final. The Tigers were a team that were more about what ifs than actually competing, unfortunately. Like we only saw glimmers of a team that could have won the national championship last season. And Stanford just wasn't playing up to their fullest potential today. This was a tough game regardless, going on the road to Clemson, South Carolina. But I think this Stanford team will be able to rebound. They got a lot of experience. It's behind center and just all around the team. And I think Stanford will stick around the top 25 for a little longer. As for Clemson, wow. How about that big win, especially with a tough conference coming up? Florida State just beat a top 15 team in Georgia. That is going to be a matchup we're circling down in week 7. Week 7 is going to be very busy. But anyway, Pigbear, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I I mean, and I could talk about Clemson for hours, but just the fact that ACC had a strong week also. Florida State gets that upset. Florida State's a team who hasn't been relevant for a little while. They've got a perfect opportunity to put themselves back in the limelight in that Week 7 matchup with Clemson.
And
Also,
Clemson can boost their pedigree even more with the win over Florida State.
they prove why we belong in the national championship with a win there.
I think both teams could end up undefeated by the time they meet each other, so that'll be very exciting. From
Yeah.
the ACC to the Pac-12 out west, Wazoo, a shocker to make the conference championship that year. You're playing Kansas, who might try to be the shocker in the Big 12 this season. Kansas got a very convincing win, 34-20 over Wazoo. The Jayhawks, I think the Big 12 had probably the best weekend of the week. Even with Baylor's loss to Oregon, I think the Big 12 proves that they are the conference to beat this season. You have Oklahoma State. Baylor still played very well in spite of their loss. You have Kansas playing good football. We'll talk about Kansas State in a little bit. There are some real contenders in the Big 12. Pigbear, your thoughts?
Yeah, just shout out to the Big 12 for this entire weekend. I think great weekend so far. Texas got the win also. Can't
hmm
forget about that.
Oklahoma got a dominant win too over South
Oh yeah.
Carolina.
Did the entire conference win, or was there
Not
any
the entire
losses?
conference. There's a couple. Nebraska, I know, lost to Tennessee. But
Uh,
moving on to the Big East. Louisville playing their first game under the Big East banner. 21-18. They get a win at home against Georgia Tech, who is under their new banner this season in the ACC. Georgia Tech's next game is Clemson, I believe, in Atlanta. And this would have been
an old rivalry reunited in conference now.
Mhm. Clemson, Georgia Tech played each other occasionally over the years, but now it's a conference matchup.
Glad to see that rivalry back in full fold.
With these two performances, how do you think Georgia Tech's going to fit in the ACC and Louisville to the Big East, Big Bear?
Louisville will be in the top of the pack in the Big East. I don't really doubt it. Them and UCF are great additions. Georgia Tech will be a middle to bottom. Well, they did recently have some success, but they'll be middle to upper middle of the pack in the ACC.
I think they got to stay competitive. Matt Muse, if you remember, won Coach of the Year 2 years ago for his
Yeah, he
performance
did.
at Georgia Tech. So he's got to start picking up. He's a lot younger than a lot of his cohorts and colleagues in the industry. But eventually, you got to start building a pedigree, or you're out the door. That's especially after
Yeah.
you take over for a Hall of Famer that preceded him. To Arlington now. A couple Hall of Famers came from there. They're out in Jerry World, TCU. And TCU was number 17 in the country. That is going to change now. 47-40 in overtime. A Cowboys kickoff classic living up to the name. Kansas State stealing away from TCU. If you remember, TCU wanted to join the Big 12 before getting the Pac invitation during the whole team swap thing. It wasn't originally BYU and it wasn't originally BYU and Houston to the Big 12. It was SMU and Houston. Then they swapped, and because TCU really wanted that power conference bid, they got picked up by the Pac-12 alongside SMU. How do you feel about these moves, and how do you feel about Kansas State's win?
Well, I mean, it doesn't make too much geographical sense, but both are kind of fighting in each other's territory with the addition of BYU closer out to the Pac-12 or
How do you feel?
Pac-10. Okay, Pac-12, yeah,
Yeah,
Pac-12,
Pac.
obviously.
I
4.
no longer have to make the mistake of calling it the Pac-12 and I have to correct myself to Pac-10 because now it's just Pac-12. Anyway, how do you feel
Yeah,
about Kansas State in this game? I think
good win. Just proving Big 12 dominance so far. Great weekend for the conference.
Kansas State can be scary. I think we forgot that. It wasn't that long ago that K-State was playing for a spot in the national championship. That was back in 2021. They got that spot stolen away from them by Baylor.
Yeah,
We don't remember that because K-State stumbled to Minnesota in the Cotton Bowl that year, but K-State can put together really good runs if you let them. And I think there might be the right time to do that. TCU were 4.5-point favorites, by the way. Moving on to Yankee Stadium in the Bronx for a historic Shamrock series. Some of the greatest games of all time played at Yankee Stadium, one of which was an all-timer matchup back in the 20s, Army and Notre Dame. Now, 100 years later, a rematch of that classic 1924 match, Army and Notre Dame. This time, the Fighting Irish were superior. They get a 28-23 win. They did not cover. They were 6.5-point favorites. But Notre Dame notches a win on their belt in a historic game. Army, always a tricky opponent. You'll have to watch out. Even if this isn't as strong an Army team as we've seen in the past, I think they'll provide a challenge to anyone trying to play them. Danny or Pig Bear?
Good shout outs to Notre Dame getting the win in a historical matchup. And Notre Dame, even though they didn't cover, still they might be the most overhyped team, but not like overhyped as they're fraudulent. They just get overhyped because their name and pedigree.
I would watch out.
Like they can be a good team. I think they are a really good team. I'm not entirely sure how great, if they are great or really.
We
really
do need to check. We do need to make sure, or we do need like a real test for Notre Dame. We have Army, a good team, but we haven't really. But if you beat Army, I don't think we've seen the entirety of you yet. I think Notre Dame's real big test comes 2 weeks from now. They get Virginia Tech. They have Virginia Tech and Ohio State. They both come to South Bend back to back. That's where we're going to see how good this Notre Dame team really is.
Oh, yeah, that should be huge.
From Yankee Stadium to the Smurf Turf, a stadium iconic in a different way, Boise State taking on USF. The Broncos, ranked number 18 in the country. They felt slept on. They felt like they're being excluded from the party. All right. Though they had some difficulty in this game, South Florida gave them all they could handle. But it was the Broncos who get the victory 20-14. Boise State, a 13.5-point favorite, surely didn't cover here. Pig Bear.
Yeah, South Florida fought, but I mean Boise State just proved they were the better team in the end.
Short and sweet, really. Two big non-power teams facing off against each other in Brookings, South Carolina. From the Smurf Turf to the Surf Turf we go. Coastal Carolina. Conway.
Yeah, sorry.
From the Smurf Turf to the Surf Turf, Coastal Carolina hosting Liberty. It was the Flames who get a 27-24 win over the Chanticleers. Liberty, a favorite in the Conference USA. Meanwhile, Coastal Carolina, a favorite in the Sun Belt. I think this game goes to show how competitive both squads are. 27-24, very closely knit game. Liberty going and getting the win on the road. What do you think of that, Pig Bear?
Yeah, it's tough to play at Brooks Stadium, but the house that Hooters built. Yeah, fun fact. But I mean, just shout to Liberty getting the victory there.
From there, we go to the west. To the west in the Rocky Mountains, Colorado and Colorado State. The Buffaloes have been incredibly dominant in this rivalry, but not anymore. Colorado got wins 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23. That was 5 in a row. Oh, this time it was the Rams who snapped their losing skid in this rivalry. 24-17, Colorado State taking the Rocky Mountain Showdown. If you remember, both the head coach and quarterback Maurice Powers of Colorado State transferred together to Penn State. And those were the
Yeah.
two pieces that Penn State needed to make the national championship. Is this Colorado State a lot is that Colorado State team a lot better than we would have thought?
Yes. In the post Powers era, they didn't do great last year, but I mean this year they got an upset over Colorado. So let's see how far it takes them.
Colorado were favored by 10.5. We now jump to the Sunday games, first of which a 5 overtime showdown in the Orange Blossom Classic, probably our game of the week, all things considered.
Oh yeah.
It was Howard, the 6.5 point underdogs, who steal it from Florida A&M, the MEAC favorites, 47-45, the final score. Pig Bear, your thoughts on this matchup?
What a shootout. You can never count a team out until it's directly over. And so just shout out to both FAMU and Howard for great games. Helmet stickers to both teams.
This is a great matchup. I think Howard's stock is now up in the conference. Meanwhile, let's go to Vegas. Dave Show and Arizona State. The Battle of Sparky. ASU, a 4.5 point favorite. This game was fought tooth and nail. This was another one we played on call. I believe we played the FAMU and Howard matchup too. That Sunday. This was a great game to watch though. 27-21 the final. Dave Show stealing it in overtime. Dave Show, their first year in the ACC, getting a power win their first week out. Up next, they have a tough challenge that we're going to talk about later against Florida. Your thoughts, Pig Bear?
Can you please repeat that, please?
Dave Show, after their win against Arizona State.
Oh, yeah, Dave Show, my bad. I'm sorry. I zoned out. Like, Florida, what?
Dave Show's next game is against Florida.
The Sunshine State SmackDown. Give me the Truckers winning that one. Pre-prediction.
In an upset.
Yeah, sorry for zoning out. Long day, I'm tired.
What are your thoughts on how Dave Show will compete in the ACC?
Again, I think they'll be another middle to upper middle of the pack team.
Any thoughts about Arizona State while we're at it?
What's the final score?
27-21 in overtime.
I mean, yeah, they fought like you know what, and to get the game to that point, so good props to them.
ASU, of course, always a tricky team. They upset Stanford last year. They always have something up their sleeve. Also on Sunday, a game postponed due to lightning. It was supposed to be on Thursday, rather.
On the lake.
On the lake, the weather conditions were not very favorable that day, though. Auburn and Northwestern, the first game on their new stadium, on their new temporary stadium on Lake Michigan. 20-6, the final score. Auburn with a statement over Northwestern. Your thoughts, Pig Bear?
Just great to see the new stadium. It's temporary. It's a nice stadium, and Auburn got the victory.
I can attest. Watching it IRL, it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I also want to shout out. Hey, Danny, welcome back to the call. You don't have to talk, but we know you're here.
All right.
Awesome. We move ahead to Monday. Last night we saw Indiana upsetting Virginia on the road. The Cavs, reigning ACC champs, they were ranked number 21st in the country last week. That stock is likely to fall after their loss to the Hoosiers. Your thoughts, Pig Bear?
The Hoos lose to the Hoosiers, and I mean, no one's totally immune from a Monday night upset.
A weekday game. All right. From there, we're going to move on to our top 25. I got to pull this up on another screen. I had to save it over here. We're going to kick things off with our top 5, which sees some changes. Starting with number 1, though, unchanged, Oklahoma State remaining your top team in the country. Following up that, Michigan jumps a spot over Virginia Tech. Michigan at 2, VT at 3. Oregon jumps 2 to number 4. Penn State remains put at number 5. So your top 5 So the one change in the top 5, Oregon is now in. Florida dropped out. We'll talk about them in a moment. Number 6, UCF. Number 7, Clemson. And number 8, Baylor all jump one spot, even with Baylor losing to Oregon. At number 9, Louisville, our biggest riser, jumping 11 off the last poll. They were number 20 last week. But they got a huge swing in momentum thanks to a bunch of teams above them falling. And wrapping up the top 10 is Stanford. Stanford 0-1, but they didn't seem to move that much even with their loss. Danny, your thought, or Pigbear, your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty standard with a few changes so far.
Danny, you want to give thoughts on the top 10?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting about the fall of Florida, national champions to barely hang on.
Florida's not even in our top 10. They're here sitting at 11. They fell 7 spots from last week. They were number 4 last week. The whole SEC, it seems like the roof is starting to cave in on them. We'll have to see how that develops going forward. USC, though, is benefiting, jumping 2 spots from last week. Pitt and Wisconsin both drop a spot. Pitt did not play. Wisconsin got a win over Southern Illinois. Duke beating SMU. They get the win. And they jump a spot to 15. Now it's 16, up 3. Pardon me, with the win over USF. Boise State is sitting there. Dropping 6 spots from last week is Alabama. They're at 17. Number 18 is New Mexico State, who jumps a spot from last week after beating NIU in Atlanta. Number 19, new to the top 25, is Mississippi State. They were the odd SEC team that did get a win. They beat Chattanooga that week. Number 20, Texas, jumping 5 spots with the win over Alabama. I'm sure they will keep rising in the future. Number 21, Georgia, dropping 6 from last week. After their loss to FSU. Jumping 2 to 22 is Kansas. It's the Jayhawks got the ranked win over Washington State. They are 1-0. Number 23 is Cincinnati, also 1-0. They got a win over Miami, Ohio. They remain unmoved. And we wrap up with 2 new teams in the top 25, each with upset wins this week. Number 24, Ohio State, enters our top 25. And number 25, wrapping us up, Florida State, who beat Ohio State beating Florida and Florida State beating Georgia. Our others receiving votes, TCU dropping 9 out of the top 25. Virginia dropping out of the top 25 as well. West Virginia returning into the next up. New to our next up is Utah. They're sitting at 1-0. And Washington State dropping 8 spots after their loss to Kansas. All right. Any thoughts on the remainder of our top 25? Danny?
At least Florida State's doing better than they are in real life.
That is true. Pigbear? Pigbear?
Big Bear.
All right, we'll move on from there. You joined us just as we're about to get to our games of the week.
All right.
I did have our records saved. I don't know if we'd still have those up. Our prediction records up. I did pretty good last week, I think. But we'll move on now. We're gonna start with our biggest weekday game, I think. Friday on September 6th, we have Wisconsin and Nebraska, 2 power teams with losses. Wisconsin, of course, in our top 15 at number 14, heading on the road to the Cornhuskers. Nebraska losing to Tennessee last week. Whiskey favored by 3.5. I like the Huskers in an upset here. Danny?
Give me the Badgers. They are kind of hot right now. The big win. Nebraska's got to recover from losing to Tennessee at home last week. So give me the Badgers.
Pigbear, you good? All right, we'll move on here. On to September 7th, we have a former Big East matchup with Boston College and Rutgers. BC now in the ACC. Rutgers favored by 6.5 at home to the Eagles. I like Boston College, though, in an upset. Danny?
Give me Boston College as well. I think they have enough talent with them to try and make a statement.
Okay, now we head to Atlanta, where Georgia Tech, after their loss to Louisville, welcomes in number 7 Clemson. The Tigers are favored by 10.5. I like Clemson in this one, Danny.
Give me the Tigers as well. First ACC matchup for the Yellow Jackets.
That is true. They'll be opening their new banner now. On to the Keystone Showdown, Pitt and Penn State from Pittsburgh. Penn State, 7.5-point favorites. I think Penn State wins plus the points. Danny?
Give me Penn State. They have definitely the better roster.
How about a ranked matchup? We didn't expect this to be so a year ago, but Michigan, number 2 in the country, heading to Austin to take on number 20 Texas. This might be This might be a game to circle on your calendar for sure. Or make sure you don't miss this. This might play a huge role in both the Big 12 and Big 10 races. I like Michigan in this one on the road. Danny?
Give me the Wolverines.
All right, now on to Athens for the home debut of Georgia. They still remain ranked to make this a ranked matchup against Louisville, who comes into town. Number 9 Louisville and number 21 Georgia. The Bulldogs are favored, but not as much as they were a week ago. I think Georgia picks up the pieces and gets the win over Louisville. Danny?
I actually think Louisville's going to win. Louisville has a lot of talent. They have an explosive offense.
Moving on, Oklahoma State, the number 1 team in the country, heads to Fayetteville to take on the newly SEC Arkansas Razorbacks. Oklahoma State favored by 17 in this one. I don't think the point spread is that much, but give me Oklahoma State to win this. Danny?
What?
Oklahoma State, Arkansas.
Give me Oklahoma State. They have a super powerful offense, and Arkansas has struggled against Tulsa.
All right, moving on now to the Danny B game of the week, exclusively here on the Taipei Joey 101 Discord, where we see the Sunshine Smackdown, a classic burgeoning rivalry between Florida State and our Dave Show University Truckers. Florida losing last week to Ohio State, and Dave Show getting the win over Arizona State. That shaved quite a bit off of the over under rather. It shaved a bit off the line. Florida is favored by 3.5. I like Florida to rebound and get a win here. Danny?
Give me the Truckers in an upset. They're going to Truck Stop Stadium, home of Seminole Field, and they should be a big matchup.
On the topic of rivalries, the Cy-Hawk Trophy, Iowa State and Iowa in Ames. Iowa favored by 6.5. I like Iowa in this one. Danny?
Give me Iowa as well. That
Right.
defense is full.
Oh, you're back? We are in score. We're doing scores right now, or predictions right now. Real quick, let's run through your gauntlet here, Pig Bear. Wisconsin, Nebraska.
Wisconsin.
Boston College, Rutgers.
Boston College.
Clemson, Georgia Tech.
Clemson.
Pitt, Penn State.
Pitt.
In an upset. Michigan, Texas.
Texas.
Another upset. Louisville, Georgia.
Georgia.
Oklahoma State, Arkansas.
Arkansas.
In an upset. Florida, Dave Show.
Dave Show.
Another upset. We're going the chaos mode. Iowa State.
Iowa. How long was I asleep for?
To that point, we were just doing Iowa.
It was a quick doze off. It wasn't like a deep sleep.
Mm-hmm. Iowa and Iowa State where we were. Now we head out to Provo, debuting in the Big 12. Their first home game. BYU hosting Miami. Miami got a win last week over Purdue. BYU got the win over Arizona. Miami favored by 3.5 on the road. I like BYU in an upset. Danny?
Give me BYU as well. It's hard to win out in Provo.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, give me BYU also.
All right, up next, CASN. Another game will be streaming on the Discord. How about App State and Charlotte, the Pig Bear Bowl we saw last year in bowl game form. This time it's in the regular season. Appalachian State, I believe, got a win last week. Meanwhile, Charlotte lost to Ole Miss. App State favored by 3.5 on the road. I like Appalachian State to win this one. Danny?
Give me App as well.
Pig Bear?
Give me App.
All right. Moving on. North Carolina and UConn from from Rensselaer Field in East Hartford. Tar Heels favored by 10.5. Give me UConn in an upset, though, Danny.
Give me North Carolina. That Tar Heel blue should help beat out the Huskies.
Pig Bear?
Give me Carolina.
UNC coming off an upset coming off a loss to UCF. UConn coming off a loss to FIU. UNC 10.5 point favorites in that one. Up next, Stanford and Vandy both coming off losses. Stanford 10.5 point favorites in their home debut against the Commodores. Give me Stanford, Danny.
Stanford big.
Pig Bear?
I'm feeling it, but not the upset. Stanford close.
All right. Up next, Purdue, who got a win over, or who played close but lost to Miami last week, taking on Kentucky. Purdue a 5.5 point favorites. Give me the Boilermakers at home, Danny.
Give me the Boilermakers as well. Playing in West Lafayette and crazy things have happened.
Pig Bear?
Another close one, but give me Purdue.
Up next, LSU, the presumptive best team in the SEC right now. The Tigers are now 10.5 point favorites coming off a road win against Houston as they come back home to play a tricky UTSA squad. Give me the Tigers in this one, though. Danny?
Give me the Tigers.
Pig Bear?
Give me the Tigers.
All right. Off their upset loss to Dave's show, Arizona State heads back home to Sun Devil Stadium, hosting Texas A&M. TAMU 7.5 point favorites. I like Texas A&M. I think they have the tools necessary to rebound this season. Danny?
Give me Texas A&M.
And Pig Bear?
Give me Texas A&M.
We're all going TAMU. Up next, from the Kibbe Dome, our old buddies in Idaho, the Vandals got a win against Eastern Washington. They'll take on Washington State after they lost to Kansas last week. Washington State favored by 6.5. Give me Idaho, though, in an upset. Danny?
Give me Idaho.
Pig Bear?
Have to disagree and say give me the Cougars here, but good interesting rivalry matchup here.
A dormant rivalry that might be dusted off now that both teams are pretty decent. I think they could be competitive with each other at some point. Meanwhile, maybe that Pac-12 bid might be in the cards after all. Regardless, though, in the meantime, we stay in the Pac-12. Oregon 1-0 after their win over Baylor. They host a Utah State squad who can be pretty challenging. They just lost to Utah. They're 1-1. Oregon 1-0. Oregon favored by 17. I don't think it's that much of a spread, but give me Oregon. Danny?
Give me Oregon as well. They have a super powerful offense. Should be able to win.
Pig Bear?
Aggies give them some problems for a while, but Oregon pulls away late in the second.
Oregon. Up next, our last rapid fire game, Hawaii. One of the few 2-0 teams in the nation, taking on a 1-0 UCLA. UCLA, a 1.5 point favorite. This game is essentially a pick 'em. I like Hawaii in this one. Danny?
Give me the Bruins. I could feel the win.
Pig Bear?
You know what? Give me chaos. Give me Hawaii.
All right. Hawaii with a pretty light schedule. If they can beat UCLA, the chance of going undefeated is in the cards for them. But now we move from there to our game of the week. This time we're heading to an old school rivalry from the Mid-Atlantic. Number 3 Virginia Tech hosting an unranked West Virginia. This game got chosen because there is upsets in the air. I think West Virginia might be in danger in this one if they can't hold things together. Virginia Tech, a 10.5-point favorite. I think I think the air is prime for an upset here. I like Virginia Tech in this one, but I would not at all be surprised if the Mountaineers steal it. Danny,
Give me Virginia Tech. They're gonna win the Black Diamond.
Pig Bear, send us
Well, the
home.
song may be about Western Virginia, and Vautech is Southwest Virginia, more the Roanoke Valley than the Shenandoah Valley. West Virginia will go in the lane and get the upset. Mark my words.
And those are our picks for John Denver versus Metallica. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for watching this. Don't forget to tune in on Saturday, both on the Discord and on YouTube. We got plenty of games for you. Thank you all for watching, and so long.